Now, look, it was a pretty rough week. So we're going to take a second to go back through memory lane and see how we've progressed throughout the year. So after round 5, I was actually just outside the top 20,000 in there on that one, and then had a pretty solid week into 15,000 there in that one. After round 7, basically halved my rank into 7,000. Then we got into 3,000 after round 8. It was a very big move there in that one. Into 2,600, 2,000, 2,600 again, into 3,000, into 1,600. So we really moved into that top 2K in this point. And it obviously shows that you can move up pretty quickly, right? From a pretty dire start this season, with a lot of the popular guys not going well and missing out on Hosking and Fogarty and these types of guys. By choice, my mistake. But 1,300 there, into 1,800, back into 1,100, into 705 in round 17, 558, which is basically where I'm at right now in round 18, moving to 528, then into 431, 463, 232 was my massive week there, where all my South guys went really, really well. Gray and Cook especially, that was a massive week for me, into 232. And then we slowly moved back from there. Didn't trade in that one, into 264. Same deal into 323. And unfortunately, this round now into 568. So you can go through a fair few things across any week and to end up in massive rank changes for sure. I spoke to Alex the other day, and he started pretty poorly, but then quickly moved into a good spot in the top 1,000 and then has never left that spot. So throughout the season, you can end up and down in certain positions, whether that's, into 300, back out to 1,000, then you can push all the way to top 100, right? Week to week, you can make massive moves. And personally, I went from 323 last week, making 2 trades this week as well. It's not like I'm out of trades, and then moved to 568, which is a pretty rough week. And there's a lot of people that went the other way. Shout out to Hayden in the private group there. He went from about 64th, I believe, into 25th this week. So a massive change, which you wouldn't expect in those type of rankings that can happen on the good side. He did pick up over 1,100 and beat me by about 250 points, which is pretty crazy. So I picked up an 860 this week, and it just wasn't a win overall. My lowest score wasn't anything crazy, to be honest there at all. Like, my lowest score was my trade-in of DCE. I didn't have any concussions this week. I didn't have any big injuries that happened. It was just a lot of 30s. And you see there, in a lot of the good players, it was 70 plus, 70 plus with Isaiah Yeo, AFB. You had Tarpany with the high 60s, all these types of guys. And my best score this week was Hughes, and he saved me, and Carrigan as captain into a 73. So Hughes is 87, Paddy's 73, and then Iro 67, who's owned by most players there. And everyone else was in the 30s apart from Tedesco, and then some 40s in there as well, which wasn't great. So that was where things were lost this week, just missing out on all those 60s, 70s, and 80s type of players in that midsection. And my purchase a bunch of weeks ago just continues to burn me in that of Watson. So if he was Isaiah Yeo instead, which they were at the same price, but unfortunately Isaiah Yeo took a rest in round 20 and I picked Watson instead, and that's been this last few weeks really. If I had Isaiah Yeo, I'm probably sitting in a position, even with how poor this week went, I'd be sitting in a position somewhere in the early 300s, I'd imagine, just from that one selection alone, or even better, because Watson had a 7 a couple of weeks ago and kind of cooked me there, where Isaiah Yeo's gone 80-80, so it might be a lot higher than the 568 there, that's for sure. So just single little moves like that can win or lose you a month period, and it hasn't been the correct and the best month for me, this one. But that's fine. The month before was great, and basically the whole season from like round 5 has been on a big improve. And you can just see here with the types of players that I have in, they're a little bit more of that hit and miss style. You've got Gray, obviously got very, very cheap, so that's fine. But I picked up Marzu after a fairly tough season, so it was a bit of a turnaround play. That was it there. Colin Matungi had a stretch of games where he was absolutely crushing it, but he's gone back to times where he has got these types of scores. You've got Cook in there. There was always a risk of him getting rests in certain games. That's come to fruition there. Guys like Whiten could be a bit all over the shop, similar to that with Garrick. And obviously Blore was a bit, could have done well, could have not done well. We weren't sure when we were buying him. I was just hoping in that one there. And then buying Starling, knowing that there's some risk as well. So things that were working well for me a month ago, their risk has come to the forefront here in this week especially, but in recent weeks as well. So that's where going with the tried and true guys works perfectly. But if you're in a situation where in round 15, 1800, and you're wanting to be in that top 500, top 1,000, you do have to make some, a certain amount of moves and take a risk on some cheaper players to get you in a position like I am in right now. But it just hurt me this week, unfortunately. The things that got me here are what hurt me this week. And that can happen. And this is where getting those top tier guns in Isaiah Yeo, Barnett didn't go that great, but he had been before that. But we also know Barnett's not someone that's a regular 50 plus guy. It's just this year he's gone to another level. But guys like Turbo, AFB, Burton, guys that we know that are very, very consistent. But there was still guys that if you picked wrong, like Dylan Edwards, then you went low. Like Cam Murray went massive, but he's out for a couple of weeks. Harry Grant, Tarpany, all the tried and true guys did a great job. Nickra as well had one of his better weeks. But then you have McInnes on the other hand, who has a low one. Gagai, we know what he's been like. Crichton, he's had a massive one this week, but he's had low ones the last 3 weeks. So it's a lot of it is to do on the luck on the certain week as well. And maybe next week for me is a great one. And we just got some news that the Storm are going to be resting 10 of their players, which will be fun, especially when I own 2. And I'm hoping the Blaw's not one of them, but I'd say that he would be, given he hasn't really had a big rest outside of the 10 minutes he gets every game, 10, 12, 13 minutes, and also the buys that the Storm have had. He's played pretty well every game since he's made that bench or that starting team. So that's that there. And just another quick reminder, guys, for those that are watching, I'm going to be doing a finals fantasy edition. So make sure you are sticking around with the channel. Once everything finishes in round 27, I'll keep reminding people on the channel and on the podcast there to come have a play at that game. It's going to be free. Just a bit of fun there for your final series to keep up with the fantasy action and get away from your team that you've had for the 27 rounds and all preseason and just into picking the finals players there. And I'll explain more of that as we get closer to it. So that's my team there on that one. In terms of guys that are going to be out this week, I did sell Fainus. Remember, it didn't start all that well. I would have been able to take his 72 if I kept him in my side, but it would have hurt me for this week, obviously, with another guy out, him and Galvin, obviously. I could have held the trade for DCE and just got Paddy instead, right, as well. So they could have just used the trade this week instead, but alas, we are here. Hopefully Watson is back. We're going to have Galvin out. We're likely to have Hughes out, and I think likely to have Bloor out. And that just really is going to depend on someone like Tedesco. If he manages to get a rest, is it this week? Is it going to be round 27? And round 27 is not one I'm going to be worried about because I'll have those Storm players come back. Most likely, I'll have Galvin return, and I don't have any Wars in my team. So I'm likely to be using my final trade this week. And hopefully over the last 2 weeks, I've put myself in a good enough position where all of my guys are playing. And if they do happen to rest a couple of players from my squad randomly, then I will be fine coming into that last week. And I could lose up to 4 basically, because I should, if there's no injuries this week, I should have 21 available for next week. So hopefully I can bounce back. And my goal now is just to get back into that top 500 after being a 220 odd. To now be 568 is pretty tough. But that's my situation. That's where I'm at. I'm going to see where all the restings play out and then work out who I want to trade this week, whether it's a cheaper guy that I can go up, I've got the 35k, whether it's a more expensive guy that something's going to happen. We'll work that out as we come to it and see who's rested and who's not. So that's my fantasy side. We'll get into the head-to-head squad in a second, but firstly into the SuperCoach team, which had a good week, 1478, which is crazy, a 471 point jump, rank jump, and I'm out to 2422 right now, which is good. And I've got 2 trades remaining, so should still be able to move pretty well in the next, in the next few weeks there, that's for sure. So moving to the squad, my main issue this week was having to play Brayley in that starting hooker position. I do have 415k, and of course I did trade in DCE into this team as well. So DCE was a tough start, but I did captain Turbo straight up in that one, and DCE's 41 wasn't too crash hot, but bought Carrigan a couple of weeks ago, and he's had 2 good weeks for me. Adam Finnell-Blake and Tarpany have been awesome there. Jerome's 132 was massive. I had McLean's 21, Plast 44, Brayley 40, and Marzu 38. But in amongst all that, some good scores, and obviously Fafita was pretty low. But Iro's 91, Lomax is 73, Tedesco's 130, and Crichton's 132 were all massive for me. And I did pretty well. I just keep getting unlucky with which Panther I should pick, and in this case, McLean went off early. and Tungo ended up getting a 53. So of course I've been picking Tungo every week, and he's been going under McLean. And then this week I picked McLean, and Tungo goes better than him by 33. So that's the only shocker there. And I could have easily, if I went for Burton over DCE, there's another 60 points. And then if I went for Tungo over McLean, there's another 33 points, and I'd be looking very, very close to a 1,600 score, which is pretty wild just from those two picks there alone. And that's even with, guys like Marzu, with Brayley, with Plath, all going fairly low, along with Fafita there in that one. So pretty wild how that one worked out. And just a quick look at where everyone's at in the league. So for the private group, I did move up one spot. Sorry to Matt, who I've overtaken there. The Lunatics, who've been right at the top for the whole time, and unfortunately lost 1,000 rankings this week in this one. But it's really hot up top for the lead now. I'm personally 140 points behind Adorable Rossi, Matt there. And then Dave's up top in second spot as well. And he's only, 18 points below Matt. And then I'm 118 points. That's not wrong. 122 points, I should say, behind Dave there. So the private group hasn't had a cracker on the SC side, but obviously we are a fantasy podcast and obviously YouTube channel first and foremost. So yeah, good stuff for those guys there. And then the Podmasters overall, just a quick update on those guys. Mark from the Barnstorm was in third spot now after being in second a couple of weeks ago. Dave moved up to 11. He's had an incredible last few months, actually. He was sitting sort of 500th not that long ago, and he's just been pumping out 1,500s for fun. And he's moved up 4 spots to 11th. And then Luke's in at third. Brandon's in at fourth there. So 4 guys in the top 50, and then Andrew in at 53rd. So a really good little stint. But I'm personally 28th out of 97 of the Podmasters League. So for a fantasy podcast, we're doing not too bad in SuperCoach, but I do want to get my best finish here over the last 2 years since making content on the channel. That is the goal, that's for sure. So looking at last year's history, when we look at season 2023, we did end up finishing in 2,109 was our spot at the end of last year, after unfortunately peaking in round 17 at 594. We started going backwards from there, but we want to beat that 2,000 this year, get close to that top 1%. With 2 trades to go, I think we're in a decent spot. I had no trades left from the end of round 24 last year, so that's why we were obviously falling out of it in the last few. But with the 2 trades left, I think we should be able to go pretty good. And we'll see how we go. I might try to end up using those last 2 this week, but we'll see how that one plays out, that for sure. So that's the SuperCoach situation. Again, we'll be waiting on resting, seeing how things go, but I've just moved guys back into place, Watson back into start, and I'm sitting at a projected score of 1,420 if I keep Turbo as captain there. So Turbo and Tedesco, how good were they? And I've mucked around with putting Holmes back in, leaving McLean out, and you've got Tungo there, but we'll see how that one goes because they've got the South this week, so they could go pretty well still. And we'll muck around with maybe like Plus got on over 700k, so there's a few guys there we'll muck around with potentially moving and upgrading, given I've got 415, so at least 1 trade, and we'll work out the second one if we need it with anyone who potentially has some upside for this week, which we'll go through in another video, obviously there post round results. So yeah, there's a few to look at, obviously, and there's a few close games as well, so pretty fun on that front. Let's get into that fantasy head-to-head team now, which was up and down one. So this was a scary one. We were a couple of points in the lead in a few and a couple of points behind another, but thankfully a 993 is pretty solid. And let's see how we end up going. But that lovely 85, Carrigan 73 was absolutely hectic. You got Nicker up at a 69, you got Ponga at a 72, all massive scores, and then Cam Murray. Traded him in. I used my last trade in the end, Curran to Murray, because Curran was a chance of being out the next few weeks, and I needed a decent score, and I got it in the semi-final and some grand finals there. So we'll see how we've ended up going in our leagues. But a 993, much better than how I went personally. Alrighty, let's go. I think the updates were pretty kind to us, apart from one of them. All right, so we got the win there in the Serrato Cucks. I ended up getting the win, 993 over Doggy Styled at 950. So very happy with that win there. We also won the League of Legends. We sat second overall in the Serrato League. and won that one 993 versus 948 against Ned's Ninjas, who's also a Cows fan, which is cool. In Liam's league, I managed to get a great win in the prelim there, 993 versus 978. That was massive, and I unfortunately lost in the next league there with 1018 versus 993. So that was tough. I'll lose that one. And then the Sweat Lobby, I ended up getting the win over All Out NRL Fantasy 993 versus the 966. And the big thing and the big change here, I should say, was the fact that I believe with the score of Sipley, who I had they had in there as a 0 because he was 18th man, I ended up getting that score of Reed Marnie of 40, which wasn't counting at that point, I believe. So I said I was actually behind, but that 40 ended up helping me out. So little issue this week with Galvin being out. I don't have a Hughes. I do have a Howarth, though. We'll see if he's one of those 10 that are likely to be rested. All the rest of the guys, obviously outside of Murray and Galvin, hopefully are fine, but we'll see how that plays out. With our half position, I'm going to have to move either Whiten or Campbell into that half spot for this week and see how that goes. And obviously have Galvin back for round 27. So really happy with the efforts there. I've obviously won 2 of my semis and we'll move into the grand final for that one next week. Hopefully I've got enough in the tank to get through this week, and then it doesn't really matter in round 27, to be honest anyway, for this head-to-head, because it'll all be done. But very, very happy to be a winner in multiple leagues already, and hopefully we can get a couple more to really finish off the season in a position where I won about 65% of my league, sort of 6 out of 9 or something like that. 66.6%. There you go. Repeater. So that's good. All right, they're the 3 teams, guys. I hope that helps you guys. Hope that was fun. Thanks for sticking around for it. What I did forget, though, and before I move on, is the actual leagues I did forget the podcast league, but I will say I'm into second position in that one. And the private group, our shout-outs there. We've got Bev still in first position. In 10th, though. Unfortunately, not his best week, but a solid one. Hayden, as I said, big move. 1,111 was massive. Liam is in there in 30 at a 966. Pretty solid at 35th overall. Is that correct? 37th, I should say. 50th overall for Mitch there at 961. We got Richard in there at 68th with 1,020. Don at 70th. Nikki at 71st. So they're 2 points away from each other. Anthony, a big move again. 1,014 into the top 100. So a move from about 1,000th 5 weeks ago. We'll get him on the channel this week as well to chat through it. But into a 98th position, unfortunately. Oh, and a big one from Simon as well with a big move. And Jack and Shane, unfortunately, just moving out of the top 100 there after being in there last week. So congrats to all those guys for being in the top 10, the private group. It's a crazy achievement. We got prizes for the top 5 there, which would be cool. And for those that ended up in the head-to-head final, which we'll go through in tomorrow's video as well. Congrats to you guys there as well. And moved into second, unfortunately, in the Podcasters League. So we need to boost that back because that was a pretty rough finish there on that one. So yeah, we'll leave it at that for the overall side. Sorry, I missed that out and almost forgetting it again. End of the season forgetfulness, hey? Rankings overall. So Pete's still in first. Kushler's in second. Matty B in third. And they're between first and second is not many points, 27 points of that. And then a good jump of 80 points down to Matt in third. Kai, Riley, Sean, Jordan, Tom, Tamati, and then Bevan in 10th there as well. So good stuff to all those guys. And Bev now, unfortunately, is a little bit behind, 209 points behind. So it's going to be tough over 2 weeks, but I think it can still be won probably all the way up to probably top 5 with Riley. It's still 167 points away. So it's a lot. But you'd say that the highest chance is obviously between Pete and Kushler. It'll depend on luck and obviously trades available. So there you go, guys. I will finally say goodbye. Thank you for being here for round results, and we'll catch you for tomorrow's videos there as well.